I've lived in New Jersey my entire life, and I know lots of interesting people: artists, musicians, actors, business owners, and politicians. So my goal is to introduce some of the most interesting people who have ties to New Jersey. Either they live here, they work here, they went to school here, whatever tie I can think of. Many of these people are not well known even in New Jersey, but I'm going to change that because I'm Lucille Losapio, and this is Not So Famous in New Jersey. It's always a surprise to me when I meet someone who's never heard of Vin Gopal. He's a New Jersey state senator that represents Legislative District 11, and what makes that really unusual is that Monmouth County is a pretty Republican county, but he represents about half of the county, and he has for quite a while, and he's a Democrat. He also happens to be the first Indian American elected to the state Senate in New Jersey. Besides being really involved in Democratic politics in New Jersey, working on Mikey Sherrill's campaign, for example, he also happens to have his own civic organization that helps local charities. I've known Vin Gopal for a while, and I know him as more than a politician, and that's how I want you to get to know him today. I would like to uncover the real Vin Gopal, not just the political one. So I'm not going to focus a lot on politics, but I do want to start out by asking you to just give a brief description of your role in Mikey Sherrill's campaign.
Sure. So I serve in a volunteer position as her campaign chair. That just means to try to help her with political relationships, try to give guidance, help with different players in the state, help with labor unions, try to help with different factions. I have a pretty good relationship with the other five candidates who ran for governor. So to try to help bring their folks into the campaign and just really in a volunteer capacity, try to be helpful where I can.
When did you first realize that you wanted to be in the spotlight or get interested in politics?
So I always had an interest in politics. When I was young, I always loved history and government, and I really excelled more there in school and enjoyed that. I really didn't do that great in math and science and that area. So I always just had an interest in history and government. When I was in my teens and 20s, the war in Iraq was going on. So I went to all the anti-war protests and just really got more and more interested in opposing policies that were happening at that time by the federal government in the 2000s.
If you were right now a teenager or a young adult, who do you think, in terms of current politicians, would make a good impression on you?
I mean, in my lifetime, he's not a current politician. It's definitely Barack Obama.
In terms of today's politicians, people that are involved right now, if you were Gen X,
Yeah, look, I'm a very big fan of Mikey Sherrill, not just because I chair her campaign, but she's somebody who's really dedicated her entire life towards public service, whether it was in the military, whether it was as a prosecutor, and she ran an elected office, not wildly early in her life. In her mid to late 40s is the first time she got on the ballot. So I think that seeing someone like her and who's won in a very competitive district and really believes in civility and bringing people together, I think is a really good role model. And when she gets elected this November, she's really going to be a rock star nationwide.
all right, here I'm going to go in a completely different direction. What television show is most like your life? And which character would you be?
Which television show? I'm not a big,
It could be
not
a
a big,
current show, it can be an old show, and
uh,
you know,
you know,
Seinfeld.
yeah, I love Modern Family. I like Phil Dunphy, the realtor character. Uh, am I like
Why
him?
was that character for you?
I
Yeah.
feel like I'm a little goofy. He's a little goofy. I think that would probably be it, but I'm not really sure.
Okay. If you had the power right now, magical power to change any one thing, what would it be? It could be local, it could be national, it could be anything. What's
Yeah.
one thing you would want to do if you had that power?
Without a doubt, I think there's a couple things with food insecurity, making sure that, no child in our world is really
Mm.
hungry, I think is something that is pretty apolitical and should be something that kind of brings people together. I think also, we still have a lot of young children around the world that are trafficked, unfortunately, in different forms of slavery. So I think there's some areas that should be beyond politics that unfortunately countries don't seem to come together to really solve, especially when we see what is
Mm.
happening in Gaza with some of these kids that are, dying right now. It's disappointing that we can't get more countries to come together to
Yeah.
change some of these policies.
And we have people saying that it's not really happening.
Yeah, no, of course it's happening.
Given the chance of anyone in the world, and I know usually people ask, oh, who would you want to have dinner with? I want to know, given anyone in the world, who would you want to debate?
Who would I want to debate?
Yeah, who would you like to debate?
Like someone who's hostile or someone who's friendly?
Either way, who would you most enjoy debating?
Uh, who would I want to debate? Yeah, well, I guess I don't know who would I want to debate. I would like to debate Jack Ciattarelli at some point. I think he'd be fun to debate. I think that he's just been, he's a guy who's been running for office for 40 years and has taken so many positions. He's taken every different position in the last 40 years that I think he'd be a fun person to debate.
Did you ever do something mean as a kid that you're now embarrassed about?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, your kids, you're growing up and you tend to be very self-conscious and kids are, sometimes self-centered. And of course, you say and do things that are mean towards others that I don't think most adults would do.
Give me an example.
Probably comments I've made to people, probably things in past relationships. When you're kids and you're young, you do things that are childish.
If you, and hopefully this will never happen, if you were arrested, who is the first person you would call for help? And I know you'd probably want to call your wife.
I probably would call a lawyer before I call my wife, no?
Good
I would assume, right?
choice. Yeah. Tell me, what is the most adventurous thing you've ever done outside of politics?
Yeah, so what I used to love doing that I did in my 20s, and even up into my 30s. So my grandparents, while they were alive, lived in southern India. So I
Hmm.
would always save money, and at the end of every year, I would take a trip there and then spend like a week with them. And then on the way back, I would visit a different site in Europe. And I was really interested in World War II history, so I would try to visit different concentration camps. My process of going wasn't always very organized. So I would just basically just go and then figure out a hotel, figure out where I'm going. And I spent a little time in Italy where I got there and of course no Wi-Fi, no language, no electricity. So kind of just did different things as you figure it out. And that was always a little bit of an adventurous part that I enjoyed doing.
What's your favorite place that you've gone to?
Probably Hawaii. I think Hawaii is probably one of the most beautiful places. Places that I would love to go at any time are San Diego and Key West. I think those are two of the coolest places we have.
What's cool about San Diego? Because I have a really close friend there and I've been thinking about going there.
The weather is just incredible. Like it's very like in the middle. And for someone like me who's very allergy prone, like it's just very cool atmosphere, very cool. Like it feels like you're on which you are on the ocean. You're so close to Mexico. The food is incredible. The people are great, very diverse. Just a really cool city.
Everybody seems to, at one point or another, face a fork in the road. So, what was the most important fork in the road that you've had to face? And which fork did you take?
I think there's been a lot of different challenges, and I think that I made probably a decision early on where I was traveling a lot and working in different states. I worked in California and Michigan and Ohio. I lived in Cleveland for a bit, Virginia, and I was working all over the place. And I think the decision to come back to New Jersey and try a different path was one that definitely could have gone the other way and just kept working and traveling, or maybe stayed put in DC or somewhere like that.
So, as a politician, you are often in front of an audience, but have you ever had to actually perform in front of an audience?
Form like what, comedy?
Well, comedy, music,
Yeah, no, I'm
acting.
not very talented in any of those areas. I'm envious of those that have those talents. I always try to do music, but never was good at it.
What did you play?
Guitar, but I was really bad.
I tried to teach myself how to play the violin. It's not a good idea.
God bless those that are able to do it, and I wish I could, and I would practice countless hours. It just doesn't come to me, and I'm not very in rhythm. But I did take a lot of dance in college. Loved ballroom and swing dancing. Yeah,
Really?
enjoyed that a lot.
Other than dancing, you have other talents, right?
Do I have other talents? I think I'm a pretty good
Yeah.
poker player. Yeah,
Ah,
Texas Hold'em is what I enjoy.
do you often win?
Uh, I think I win more than I lose. It's one of the few areas I stay very patient. I can sit there for hours and wait for the opportunity. I mean, it's not really that relaxing when
Yeah.
you're spending hours. I did a charity tournament last year for Steam Park in Oceanport, and it was like 60 players, and there was like six left, and I had the most chips and was absolutely going to win. And I would have had to donate it back anyway, but then
Yeah.
it was like 11:30 at night, and I had to leave. So just hard to sit there for hours.
You're not going to keep the money anyway. You can be a lot more adventurous in gambling.
Yeah, I mean, when you do the charity tournaments or the 50/50s, if, as a politician, if you keep the money and not give it back to the charity, it's not really good optics.
Obviously, social media is a big thing now for everybody, whether it's musicians or politicians. How does it help or hinder a politician right now?
There's a lot of people that just, I don't know if it affects their mental health, but they just give a lot of opinions not that aren't based on fact because there's no newspapers. People get their information there, and people just read whatever is on there. And people also say horrible things about people they don't even know. So I think there's a lot more negatives right now than positives.
Yeah, and the anonymity lets people be
Yeah.
someone that they may not be if they were using their own
Yeah.
name. When we were kids, our parents always gave us rules to follow. After you eat lunch, you have to wait an hour before you go in a pool. That was one of the things in my family.
Yeah. 100%.
So when you were a kid, I'm sure your parents gave you some rules that you thought were really stupid. Name one or two of those rules that you thought were stupid then, but now you're glad that your parents had them.
Definitely curfew at night, right? We all want to say, I don't understand why I can't come home at 1 or 2 a.m. Now you kind of understand why.
I did climb in my bedroom window once or twice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that is definitely one. Curfew and just making sure you finish your work and homework and things like that before you go and play. All things that didn't think was a big deal. I'll just do it later at night.
Were you a good student?
Not really. I liked working. I was a hard worker. I would work a lot of jobs. I enjoyed business a lot. I started a lot of businesses. I don't know if I just had ADD and wasn't diagnosed, but I just wasn't always great at grades. I wasn't a terrible student. I was fine. Graduated, got my undergrad, got my master's, but I wasn't at the top of the class.
What was your first job?
Busboy at Perkins Diner, cold snack.
What did you learn there that has served you well throughout your life?
One of my first days, I got tired and I sat down, and the managers looked at me and said, "Honey, we don't sit here." So I got right up, even though there are no customers.
And what was your worst job?
I've had a lot of jobs, like a lot. I ran a dating network for a while, pretty successful.
It wasn't like Grinder.
No, it was called Selective Singles. It was in Red Bank. I was a pro wrestling referee for a little bit and set the rings up and stuff. I had a lot of random jobs. I was a CPR instructor for years, doing CPR certification classes, first aid certification classes. So I don't think anyone was bad.
So if you could talk to yourself 15 years ago, what advice would you give that Vin Gopal?
Take a deep breath and enjoy life more. Don't be in such a hurry.
Do you think that there are, well, I'm sure there are politicians who are definitely underrated. Who would be your choice for the number one politician who's really underrated?
What's the definition of the politician?
Let's not even say, maybe it's anyone that has run for office or is currently in office or was in office. And while you're thinking about that, give me one that's also overrated.
Okay, the most underrated politician. It's hard to really say. I would probably say Mayor Baraka was pretty underrated. He was somebody who raised less money than some of his opponents and was, kind of in the beginning in political circles saying that he had no shot, and was kind of ridiculed, and he kind of ended in second place. And I thought that was impressive. And he won two big counties and built an organization out of that. And well, probably if he had running mates running for state legislature in Essex County, he would have won a lot of those seats. So I would say he is somebody.
He's accomplished a lot,
He
hasn't he?
has, but he was definitely underrated and ridiculed when he entered the governor's race, and he ended up being number two. Unfortunately, overrated.
Well, there's an obvious one, Donald Trump.
Yeah. Well, he's underrated too in the sense that he wins, right? He keeps coming back, and you can't count him out. As much as I disagree with his style and his everything, he's pushing. He's
Yeah.
incredibly successful at his agenda. Overrated. I would say some of the leaders we have, like probably Chuck Schumer, Democratic Senate leader. I mean, he's been there forever. They're not winning. They're not able to adapt to a lot of the new messaging and new ways. And that was him at one point 30 years ago, going up against the old guard. And sometimes you just gotta call it quits and let the next group come in.
That's why I give Nancy Pelosi a lot of credit. I mean, she was super effective, but she stepped down when she figured now's the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, and Steny Hoyer, and they both did, and they were there for a long time, and incredibly successful speaker. But she kind of knew when her time had to be up, and she recognized that the Republicans had done a very good job of making her the campaign and making her the most polarizing part of the campaign. And now they're not able to do that when she's not the speaker.
What do you think that the Democrats have done wrong, and what should they be doing? What should we be
Yeah, I
doing?
think they have failed in communicating and bringing back working class voters and union members and cops and firemen. elements of our party jump on people and assume the worst about them if they have a differing opinion. When it's sometimes people have a different worldview, and it doesn't necessarily make them the enemy. And so, for my entire style of politics is how you build more, bring more people into your coalition, because that's how you have a winning recipe. You know, we saw it. We saw there was, I think, the overwhelming number of states across the country voted for abortion rights, but also voted for a presidential candidate that helped eliminate Roe v. Wade. So I think when we make it, Democrats make it about any one issue, whether it's abortion or this, and that's at the end of the day, it's not speaking to people who just feel like they're behind, whether it's because of, you know, however they feel, whether it's because of immigrants or corporations or their neighborhood changing or whatever they may be. And instead of approaching those people with sympathy and trying to understand the change isn't always easy, and trying to help them with seeing what the roots of their challenges are, we immediately say they're the problem. And I think that's where Democrats have lost over and over again.
People usually have very good things to say about you, but I'm sure you've heard some negative comments about yourself.
Hmm.
What kind of things do people say about you that are negative?
Oh, a lot, a lot. I've got people on the left wing of the Democratic Party that can't stand me, and people on the right wing and a lot of the Republicans who can't stand me.
I think that means you must be doing something good.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's folks on both sides that just, and I don't even put them in a political ideology. They're not like left or right or whatever. There's folks that are just, you know, they just assume politicians are evil.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it is what it is. I have somebody from Freehold Township who's emailing me today, just cursing me that I'm corrupt, this and that, because their property taxes went up.
And they still don't understand
Yeah.
that we're the only county where houses get reassessed every single year.
Yeah, you have they're getting assessed, and you also have school taxes that have gone up, and get a lot of small school districts, so it's a challenge.
So if this was the very last year of your life, how would you want to spend it? Obviously with your family.
Yes. I
But how-
think that's all I would probably want to do. Family, friends, and I think that's what most people I would assume would want to do with the last year of their lives.
So this is my last question. How different is your life now than you imagined it would be when you were 20? Oh,
I didn't know. I didn't really think about that. I didn't really know. I knew I wanted to pursue elected office probably, but I wouldn't have been surprised if I was behind the scenes for a long period of time. Ran in a district and county that I was born in, and it's a pretty tough area. So, I mean, first election I ran,
be where I am.
well, yeah, and it switched. Hazlitt used to be very Democratic
Well, we have a lot of people from Staten
15
Island
years
that moved
ago, and
here.
yeah, and Trump has definitely made that whole Bayshore area more red.
And did you know that Middletown used
Oh
to
yeah.
be very blue?
Yeah,
Yeah.
part of the early campaigns Vinnie Salamino and I worked on. We were Democratic races. We would win Belford. We won that whole area. We had committee seats. We had Hazlitt. We won seats in Union Beach. We were doing very well. And then really, I think Trump just changed the landscape. And the demographic of working class white voters, mostly men, just left the Democratic Party altogether. And that's a big chunk of the base, Keensburg, that whole area.
Well, Vin, thank you for making
Yeah,
time.
absolutely.
And I wish you a lot of luck with this campaign this fall. And I will be working on Mikey's campaign as
Awesome.
well.
Thank you, Lucille. Thanks so much for making time.
Where else can you hear scintillating conversations with interesting people with ties to New Jersey, except for here? You can't, and that's why you should subscribe and listen to every episode. I'm Lucille Osapio, and this is Not So Famous in New Jersey.